Welcome back, everybody, to Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog 2! You can't see me right now, but I'm, like, taking my fingers and doing the 2 pose with my, you know, 2 index fingers because it looks cool. It's a totally 90s thing, don't you know? So anyway, Hilltop Zone, or whatever it was called, because I was totally paying attention, I swear. This zone is a lot more linear, I feel, than a lot of the other zones. Like, you know, you have places like Emerald Hill, and, like, Chemical Plant, and Aqua Ruins, and all that shit. Like, they have all of these different multiple paths. But in reality, you come to this zone, and there's really only, like, maybe 2 paths you can take, but for the most part, it only usually seems like you can take 1. However, the zone does a decent job in offsetting this by doing things like putting things in corners where if you take your time to snoop around the place and walls and shit, you can find extra goodies. Lots and lots of big open-ended rooms. Yeah, very open-ended room, despite how... Well, not room, but rooms, because Ken doesn't know how to make his nouns plural, apparently. But yeah, yeah, despite its linear-ended nature, like, just about most of, like, the rooms you're going to be encountering in this zone are very open-ended, in the sense that they're kind of large and mostly vacant. And, again, it really encourages that you know, sit down, take a look around, and have a bit more open awareness, I find, because I feel like they definitely stick a lot of enemies in positions where, like, say for example, if I stuck with one path, like, you only have to worry about those enemies on that path, and, you know, there was only a certain amount of plane you had to pay attention to, dependent on whatever path you were going, whereas with Hilltop Zone, because of its open-ended nature, you're having to watch out for enemies coming at you from different angles, and it's a little bit more involved, which is probably why they put this at the mid-game instead of the early game. And, yeah. It's a bit more involved than you'd think. Yeah, let me talk a little bit more about, like, the Sonic series, and I guess, like, some of my knowledge about it, if that makes any sense. No, I won't lie, I don't think I've ever taken this route before. Replay value, gentle folks. Excuse me. I've watched a lot of playthroughs on YouTube of a lot of the Sonic games. I've watched, you know, the adventure games. I've watched, like, you know, Shadow the Hedgehog. I am vastly well aware of games like Sonic 06 and how atrocious they are, to the point of where I could probably photographically memorize where most of the bullshit in Sonic 06 is at without actually having to have played it. And, you know, it kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, you know? Like, I was just saying, like, I don't really consider myself a big Sonic fan, right? Like, I don't really find the games, you know, to be the kind of genre that really appeals to me, especially the 3D games, you know, outside of the Genesis titles, obviously. So, you might be wondering, well, what's up with that? And it's like, I don't really know, quite frankly. I feel like Sonic has that kind of, like... It's kind of like in that weird, uncanny irony valley where, you know, despite the game not really appealing to me and feeling a bit, I hate to say it, bland to play at times, which is probably why I didn't like the adventure games all too much. and how they felt like an unfocused mess and couldn't, you know, stick with a coherent playstyle the whole way through. There was always something about its universe I always found kind of ironic and uncanny, and not in a very good way. Like, the writing in this series is fucking abysmal. Like, I am a big fan of, like, movies that are so bad that it's good. Like, I love movie reviews of that nature, which is why I watch stuff like, you know, Birdemic and, you know, a lot of the stuff that JonTron looks over, for example. And that is, what I'm trying to say is that it's kind of the vibe I get out of the Sonic games. Like, you know, being grown up and actually sitting down and looking at these games with, like, a critical eye, or not even really a critical eye, an adult eye which tries to comprehend exactly what's going on. It's just all kinds of uncanny and weird and nonsensical. But the thing about it is that, like, unlike most other games where, you know, they realize this and, you know, try to push it as far as they can, there's something about Sonic where, you know, despite how edgy he may seem and how anti-Mario he is, which in a way is supposed to be the antithesis of, like, you know, that subgenre of gaming and, you know, platforming, what have you. It's like Sonic just kind of lacks that self-awareness to, like, realize, you know, like, when you look at the creators and how they make their games and their narratives and shit, just how bad it actually is. And there's just something kind of unironically funny about it, you know? It's like I can't help but find weird enjoyment out of it, and it's really bizarre. It's so difficult to put into words, but it just kind of works for viewing pleasure, basically. But, you know, despite all of that, it just doesn't work as a series for me as a whole, because I just... Like, if I want to play, like, other platformers, most of the time I'm going to drift towards Donkey Kong Country or, like, Mega Man, for example, where, like, the level design feels a bit more involved in focus, I guess, if that makes any sense. Sonic never really appealed to me on that level as far as the later games are concerned, which is why I only ever feel that essence from, like, the Genesis games, basically. And you gotta wonder, like, what made them go in this direction, you know? Like, how did the level design just kind of, like, you know, go backwards? Like, I understand, like, you know, Sonic 2's level design certainly isn't perfect. In fact, there's, like, this one pit in the next level, this level right here, actually, where it's very easy to accidentally spin dash into it, and then you just come into a pit where it's really difficult to get out of it regardless of your invincibility frames, and it almost seems like a stab from developers to, like, basically tell you, hey, pay a bit more attention, you're an idiot, fuck you. But outside of that rambling nonsense, yeah, it's just like, how did the level design in later games just become so less focused, you know? Like, you would figure, like, you know, when they have a success like Sonic 3 and Knuckles on hand, and then they try to make, like, you know, the later Sonic games and what have you, and try, you know, to evolve the level design, it just feels like they've regressed in a way where I can't really find the same appeal in, you know, how the later games are designed as opposed to, like, how they are in the Genesis games, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, that pit right there was the one I was referring to. Like, I hate where they positioned the stupid, like, hook thing, because, like, it's so easy to, like, overshoot yourself and then jump right into the pit, and it's... this game ain't perfect. I will gladly admit that. This game ain't perfect, but goddamn is it fun. And I don't even have to be a Sonic fan to tell you that. Despite how fucking, you know, rambly this playthrough has been so far. But yeah, it's like I said with the previous zone, like, not previous, but with Carnival Night Zone, or whatever it's called, Casino Night? I sure pay attention. Tells you how much of a Sonic fan I am. It's got that maze-like, you know, sentiment of where, like, yeah, it looks really involved, but the way forward, like, makes so much more sense the more attention you pay to the layout, and it never really feels like you get lost, despite how complicated it may look. And I'd say, like, this zone in particular is definitely my favorite in the game, because, like, it has that element that Casino Night had, but it's got a lot of, like, involved platforming and, like, anime-based challenges that, like, most of the other zones can't seem to perfect to the same degree. But, yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like once Oriole, the Oriole zone pops in, it definitely feels like Sonic 2 doesn't start becoming bad, but there's definitely a drop in quality after this point. And Oriole Zone, I'd say it's mostly because it feels a little bit too focused sometimes. Like, it's one of those zones where you just kind of go through the motion of similar based, like, platforming challenges and, like, going through a bunch of tubes and a lot of similar situations where the level's design blatantly tells you to slow down and watch for enemies, basically. But the thing about this zone is that, like, I never really feel like it evolves, you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of stays in this really awkward, stagnant state where you're just kind of waiting for things to happen. Like, the little lid things to, like, you know, move into motion, for example. And it feels like I get what they're trying to go for, where it kind of feels like a bit more involved in how, like, Chemical Plant Zone was going for example, where it was trying to mix the speed and momentum-based challenges and, like, the points where you slow down and watch for enemies at the same time. Except there really isn't much speed involved, and you take the speed away and you replace it with segments like this where you're just waiting for these things to happen, but there's no sense of, like, evolution with it. Like every time you see this, you kind of, like, expect the same thing no matter what. It's like, oh, I see this, better watch out, better sit down and wait a good 10 seconds or so, I guess. And there's not really any sense of, like, danger behind it either, and it just really kind of begs the question, what's the point? And that's kind of what I mean by the stage itself kind of going through the motions, you know? It never really finds the opportunity to evolve with what it's given, and there's just not really a comfortable pace that this stage establishes that keeps the stage from getting really stale or boring, you know what I'm saying? So, just gonna take this right here. I'm gonna hit this right here. Oh my god. So, things in life. So, outside of me promoting at my job as of recent and gaining a lot more hours, I haven't really been too on top of my games as of late. Definitely going to be getting Fire Emblem 3 Houses here soon. And I'm a huge Fire Emblem nerd, and I constantly question why I haven't done a Fire Emblem game for this channel yet. I plan on doing Path of Radiance at some point, but I've never really found the point at which to fit it in. There's a lot of games I've got planned since I've got better recording equipment, and it's like just a matter of what can I eventually decide on and actually commit to, because Lord knows how much I've put off my Metroid Prime playthrough. And I'm so looking forward to 3 Houses. But other than that, though, I've found some newfound love in the Persona series. Like, I think it was back in, what playthrough was it again? I think it might have been Super Mario RPG, that's what it was. Where I mentioned, oh my god, am I going in circles? I think I remember mentioning something along the lines of, like, playing Persona 5 recently and really loving it. So I decided that, you know what, I want to go back and play Persona 3 and a lot of the other older games and see what I missed out on. So I recently finished 3. that has like one of the best endings I've seen in a RPG, just period. Like, I don't need to speak of it any further. That's one of those things. It's one of those things where, like, where people will tell you, like, you should experience this thing at least once in your life, and then, like, once you do, it just makes all the more sense, and you don't need to be speaking of it any further. It's one of those things, essentially. So I've been on a JRPG grind lately. So I finished Persona 3, and I'm moving on to Persona 4 now. I love the cast a lot, that's for sure. I'm a big fan of slice of life anime, especially like shows akin to Clannad, for example. And Persona 4 just practically embodies that goofy slice of life like setting, and I absolutely fucking adore it for all of those reasons. The main cast feels so goddamn relatable. And I don't think I've ever had as many laughs out of an RPG as I have had with Persona 4, and it's just so fucking glorious. Kanji's a fucking trip, I swear. So, I love how all of that played out. So, I run into a spring, trying to spin dash over it, and then overshoot my spin dash, and then I just land square into a seahorse-looking enemy. And everything just kind of got grinded to a halt, I suppose. You know, that's another thing I don't like about this zone, too. I absolutely hate this zone's color palette. I feel like I kind of know what they were going for. They were trying to go for all the secondary colors, that being purple, green, and orange, and hoping that, you know, something out of it works, but it just looks incredibly gaudy. And not even in an industrial way either. Like, I feel like the final zone of Sonic 1, I forget what it's called, embodies that a little bit better. This, it's just like, it's gaudy, but it doesn't really portray like the theme of it being an oil-based rig like area all too well. And I don't know. Why am I complaining about a color palette in a video game? And this is, I don't even think this is the first time I've done that either. I think I did something like that in Metroid Fusion as well, where I was talking about the, what was it, the research lab towards the end of the game or something? I don't fucking remember. So do I go this way or not? Oh yeah, unlike everything else the game is built up to, like it feels like the sense of direction here is a bit less obvious. Like, this is probably the second or third time where I've found myself going in circles, and not in a particularly good way, because again, this level just doesn't feel very involved. And it drags as a result. I've probably been at this zone longer than at least 2 or 3 of these zones combined that I've played through thus far. Oh boy! Another boss where he hides in the subterranean thingamajig. Could probably expect to sneak in a few hits here and there. Alright, so it's 3 lasers, and then... Or? No. I thought I had the pattern down. Okay. At least I have somewhat decent reaction time. This definitely feels like like one of those cases where you have to wait for the boss to do its thing, except I can forgive this one because, well, getting a whole lot of hits in on Eggman really isn't much of a task or chore in the first place, so I'll forgive you for now, Eggman. Alright. Cute little fox boy got through Act 2 of Oil Ocean Zone. I think that's what it's called. And next up on Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog 2. We're gonna go ahead and go through the worst zone of the game, so see you guys then.